Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 27. This is CSS Dimensions. We've been looking at the box model the last few lessons, and we've looked at how you can add a border, how you can set the padding and the margin around your content area. And in this lesson we'll be learning about the width and the height. Okay, so in general there are two HTML elements, two types of HTML elements. The one would be your block element, which we know takes the full width of the browser by default, and another would be, let's say, an inline element such as the image, which only is of a certain width and height. So normally your inline elements are enclosed in some sort of a block element, like in this case these two images are inside of a paragraph. But let's go and have a look at the CSS. I'm going to first of all add a background color to my heading, just so you can see how the dimensions of that heading look. You'll see it's the full width of the browser by default. However, we can set the width to, let's say, 300 pixels, and then it limits the dimensions. You can also set the height, although the height would usually grow automatically to accommodate the content if you don't specify it. Alright, I prefer not to specify it most of the time. So let's try with the paragraph as well. I'll just put a background on it. Okay. Notice how the height of this paragraph with the two images automatically grew to accommodate the content, because I never specified the height. Same thing here. But now if I do specify height, it would be a bit silly because each paragraph is actually different, and what I'm doing here is I'm saying all paragraphs must be 400 pixels high. And you can see now what's happened in the middle paragraph. It's not high enough to accommodate the height of the two images, so we'll end up with a mess. One can set a style sheet called overflow. If we do a search for that, the overflow style sheet is quite clever. If you have a width and a height on a certain element, you can set the overflow to visible, hidden, scroll, or auto. By default it will be visible. So the overflow would be how much the content overflows the area. So the box is the orange outline, the orange background, and you can see that content is overflowing at the bottom here. So if I set the overflow to hidden, any part that's spilling over that height would then be cut off. If I set the overflow to scroll, I would then be able to scroll each paragraph at that height. And if I set the overflow to auto, it would only add scroll bars if the content exceeds that height. So there's no point in having an overflow if you don't have a height, because the only time you're ever going to have an overflow is if you limit the height. If you don't specify a height, the height grows automatically to accommodate the content. Okay, so not only do we have a width and a height, but we also have a min width and a min height and a max width and a max height. So if we go to our CSS, there's a section on flexible box layout which contains the min width, min height, max width, and max height. So for example, if I set the minimum height to 100 pixels on my paragraph, or let's set it to 200 pixels. So at a minimum, we're saying that this paragraph must be 200 pixels high. But because we never specified a actual fixed height, this height is much higher than the minimum of 200. So it grew to accommodate the content. But we're still saying at a minimum, it must be 200 pixels high. In the same way, we could specify a minimum width and a minimum a maximum width or maximum height. So for example, if I set a maximum height of 200 pixels, notice this is much less than 200 because we're saying at a maximum it mustn't exceed 200, whereas this middle paragraph has gone as far as it can, which is 200, and now we've got an overflow, which is not so good. So that basically summarizes the different ways we can dimension items within a page: width, height, min height, max width, and max height. And so ends our lesson.